Thor, Odin's son, my heir, do you swear to guard the Nine Realms?
I swear.
And do you swear to preserve the peace?
I swear.
Do you swear to cast aside all selfish ambition and to pledge yourself only to the good of the realm?
I swear!
Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
Thor has had a very storied past as a character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He went from a middling to good first film to a less than positively received second film, and then to something completely different in his third film. Of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, being as large as it is, had seen Thor in other projects interact with other characters and have his story expanded in multiple alternate ways. Including his solo films, Thor also appeared in the first two Avengers films. For the most part, in the beginning of the MCU, Thor was understood. The directors knew exactly what Thor was as a character, and they knew how to utilize him. Unfortunately, his reception wasn't as positive as his other Avenger compatriots, but overall his characterization was really good, his story was really good, and he was still a very interesting part of the MCU. And then Taika Waititi came in and completely fucked all of that up. I don't think that there's been a bigger retcon in the MCU to a character's personality than what Taika Waititi did with Thor and all of Thor's lore. He fundamentally did not understand what Thor was about and who he was as a character. I believe Taika Waititi went into creating Thor Ragnarok with the express idea of doing whatever he wanted and just having a fun time. And it's really unfortunate because Ragnarok could have been one of the best movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you don't know, in Norse mythology, Ragnarok is a series of events including a great battle foretold to lead to the death of a number of great figures, natural disasters, and the submersion of the world in water. After these events, the world will resurface anew and fertile. The surviving and returning gods will meet and the world will be repopulated by two human survivors. Ragnarok is an important event in Norse mythology and has been the subject of scholarly discourse and theory in the history of Germanic studies. In a word, Ragnarok is a pretty big deal, and we know how successful the MCU has been when they tackle those huge deal movies. Look at Infinity War, look at Endgame, look at Captain America Civil War. When the MCU goes big, they really go big. But if you've seen Thor Ragnarok, did it feel big? Did it feel like a world-ending event? It didn't have to be a one-to-one recreation of the Norse myth of what Ragnarok is, but it could have been at least interesting. Ragnarok in the MCU felt like an absolute joke. I've said it before, but comic book films and any films that are based on any sort of source material, be it a television show or a book or a video game or comics, doesn't have to be 100% accurate to be good. If you make it entertaining, then it is good. If you provide a good story, if you provide good characterization, if you provide interesting characters, then the movie will be good. Some of the least accurate films in the comic book genre are some of the best ones. X-Men First Class, not super accurate to X-Men lore, very inaccurate in actuality, but top 3 X-Men films. Logan, nowhere near accurate to Old Man Logan's comic book, but a really solid comic book film. Captain America Civil War, Aquaman, The Dark Knight, all comic book films that took their own liberties and slightly changed the stories they were trying to embody, but still turned out fantastic. Unfortunately, Thor Ragnarok just did not hit the mark. If Taika Waititi absolutely had to utilize the Ragnarok concept, I think he should have drawn his inspiration from one of the best comic books I've ever read, The New Ultimates Thor Reborn. This comic has one of the most badass interpretations of Thor in all of Marvel history, and it expertly crafts a story that is reminiscent of the story of Ragnarok. One of the first things that we ever saw for Thor Ragnarok was displayed to fans at San Diego Comic-Con. This logo was going to be the first title screen for Thor Ragnarok, which lends itself to the idea that they were going to go for a more traditional Ragnarok, a lot darker film with a lot more serious tone. But then Taika Waititi was brought along to the project, and its tone was shifted drastically. Thor Ragnarok went from being potentially the best Thor movie we ever could have seen to being a complete joke. So let's go ahead and watch along, take a look at the movie that was such a letdown, and dissect exactly what all the problems were with the film. The movie begins with some heavy-handed exposition as Thor is captured by Surtur, the fire giant who leads to the commencement of Ragnarok and the destruction of Asgard.
I thought my father killed you like 500,000 years ago.
I cannot die, not until I fulfill my destiny and lay waste to your home.
You know, it's funny you should mention that, because I've been having these terrible dreams of late. Asgard up in flames, falling to ruins, and you, Surtur, are at the center of all of them.
Then you have seen Ragnarok, the fall of Asgard, the great prophecy.
Okay, so Ragnarok. Tell me about that. Walk me through it.
My time has come. When my crown is reunited with the eternal flame, I shall be restored to my full might. I will tower over the mountains and bury my sword deep in Asgard.
Hey, that's me, but you already know I'm gonna tell you things I could probably show. Hey, welcome to the world I live in. What? It's the exposition.
Of course, Taika Waititi doesn't care to craft a story that is interesting or expertly conveys exactly what's going to happen without just taking the time at the very beginning of the movie to literally explain everything that Ragnarok entails by having two characters sit there and talk to each other about it. In the middle of this very serious conversation, Taika Waititi's Thor finds a way to make jokes about him being turned around, because this film was made for the kind of children who thinks Cocomelon is cinema. Afterwards, we're treated to an almost interesting fight sequence where Thor takes down Surtur and some of his minions and then makes a narrow escape back to Asgard. I must say the only good thing about the opening sequence was how interesting Muspelheim looked. If they had delved deeper into that realm and had more scenes take place in that area, I think we could have had the movie improve marginally. But alas, they did not. Thor makes it back to Asgard and is met by Scourge, who informs him that Heimdall has been branded a traitor to the throne by Odin and believes that there are certain things that are a bit awry.
Who are you?
Don't you remember? I'm Scourge. We fought together on Vanaheim.
Right. Where's Heimdall?
That traitor, well, no one knows. He's a fugitive of the throne.
Traitor.
Yeah, well, you see, Odin charged Heimdall with negligence of duty, but he disappeared before the trial. Hard to catch a guy who can see everything in the universe.
Sure.
He makes it back to the general Asgardian square and notices an immense statue of his supposedly dead brother Loki and a rendition of their time in Thor the Dark World going on, played by a cameo of Matt Damon playing Loki. Of course, this is all very interesting and very hilarious in a movie about the entirety of a civilization being destroyed. Scenes like this are important to the greater narrative because we really need to see a play about what took place in Thor the Dark World in a sillier rendition.
Sorry.
Lady Sif, get help!
Somebody help!
Sorry for all I've done. Shh. It's all right. Hold on. I'm sorry.
tried to rule Earth.
They'd be lucky to have you.
I'm sorry about that thing with the Tesseract. I just couldn't help myself.
I know.
I'm a trickster.
Yes, so mischievous.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
So Thor brings up something interesting in this scene that is never addressed in the film or any of the subsequent films. Apparently, the enemies of Asgard across the 9 realms are gathering together to eventually attack Asgard or take them down or subjugate Asgard's allies. It's not entirely sure what they're planning to do, but they are gathering together against Asgard.
I've been having this reoccurring dream lately. Every night I see Asgard falling to ruins.
It's just a silly dream, signed with an overactive imagination.
Possibly. But then I decide to go out there and investigate. And what do I find with the 9 realms? Completely in chaos. Enemies of Asgard assembling, plotting our demise, all while you, Odin, the protector of those 9 realms, is sitting here in your bathrobe eating grapes.
But this is never addressed. We never see them team up with Hela or Surtur in their attack on Asgard. We never see them attack Thor or Loki or even the Hulk at any point in the film. They never bring this point up ever again, and it's super bizarre that they don't. Thor proceeds to threaten Odin, which turns out to be Loki in disguise, who has basically been ruling Asgard ever since Thor's been on his little adventure going through the 9 realms, doing whatever it is he was doing at the time. He discovers that his brother has been ruling Asgard the entire time in Odin's stead and threatens him to take him to where he's locked Odin away. A weird thing happened, and I admit it's a bit of a nitpick. Some fans of Thor's come to him up on the street while they're looking for Odin and want to take a picture with him. Because of course, that makes sense. Thor would be a celebrity. He's an Avenger. He's the god of thunder.
Hi, would you mind taking a picture with us?
Oh, sure. Start figuring out where he is.
Sorry to hear that Jane dumped you.
She didn't dump me, you know.
But right next to Thor is the villain from the attack on New York, and they completely don't react to that. That doesn't really make sense to me. That's like if we had the Queen of England and Osama bin Laden standing next to each other on the street. I feel like you'd react to both of their presences. Doctor Strange then proceeds to kidnap Loki and request with a calling card that Thor show up at the Sanctum Sanctorum. He and Thor have a conversation about why bringing Loki, one of the most powerful, dangerous beings in the universe, to Earth was ultimately a bad idea. Thor explains that they're looking for Odin, and Doctor Strange messes around with him but ultimately formulates a spell to locate Odin, who is for some reason in Norway. Odin is basically at the end of his life when Thor and Loki approach, and he gives them one final message. But there are so many problems in the final conversation he has with his sons. One, to start, Loki apparently casted some spell that caused Odin to be confused or disheveled or overpowered to the point where he was able to put him in some crappy retirement home on planet Earth, and it took Odin a while to break that spell.
My sons, I've been waiting for you.
I know we've come to take you home.
Home, yes. Your mother, she calls me. Do you hear it?
Loki left your magic.
Took me quite a while to break free from your spell. Frigga would have been proud.
I don't know what the hell they're thinking with that plot point, because that basically makes the entire plot of Thor 1 pointless. Why would Loki at any point need to fight Odin with brute force or have him taken out if he had the magic to just break Odin's mind or something? They don't go into depth on what exactly Loki did, but clearly he's insanely powerful. Secondly, Odin just fucking dies for some reason. They don't explain what Odin's going through. They don't explain if his life force is running out, he wasn't in some huge battle. Instead of having the opening scene with Thor facing Surtur, they could have had a scene with Odin taking Surtur down in an effort to aid in preventing Ragnarok, but ultimately failing because Hela would still come. But no, they don't don't even do that. Odin just fucking dies because he wants to be dead. It makes no sense. He's just complaining and whining about being alive, basically, and telling his sons that my time has come and it's time for me to die. What does that mean? How does a god, how does the king of gods, the king of Asgard, the Allfather, Odin, just fucking die for no reason at all? It's the worst.
Come sit with me, I don't have much time. It is upon us. Ragnarok.
No, I've stopped Ragnarok. I put an end to Surtur.
No. It's already begun. She's coming. My life was all that held her back, but my time has come.
Oh, who are you talking about?
Goddess of death. Hela. Her firstborn. Her violent appetites grew beyond my control. Couldn't stop her, so I imprisoned her, locked her away. She draws her strength from Asgard, and once she gets there, her powers will be limitless.
Hey, that's me, but you already know I'm gonna tell you things I could probably show. Hey, welcome to the world I live in. What? It's the exposition.
I'm on a different path now. This you must face alone. Look at that. Remember this, please. Home.
What was that?
Death.
What kind?
Instant.
There was no sound. He just died.
Yeah, terrifying. It's a terrifying thing to watch happen.
Thirdly, it seems like no one in this movie cares. I want to show you the distinct difference between the acting in the first Thor movie and the third Thor movie.
Through your arrogance and stupidity, you have opened these peaceful realms and innocent lives to the horror and desolation of war. You are unworthy of these realms. You're unworthy of your title. You're unworthy.
Why? You were knee-deep in Jotun blood. Why would you take me?
You were an innocent child.
No. You took me for a purpose. What was it? Tell me!
The burden of the throne has fallen to me now.
Can I come home?
The truce with Jotunheim is conditional upon your exile.
Yes, but couldn't we find a way?
And Mother has forbidden your return. This is goodbye, brother. I'm so sorry.
No. I am sorry.
And I don't believe it's just a simple explanation as, oh, these actors are tired and playing in these films after playing these roles for so long. Because if you look at Thor's performance in Avengers Infinity War, it is infinitely better than his performance in Thor Ragnarok.
You know, I'm 1,500 years old. I've killed twice as many enemies as that, and every one of them would have rather killed me, but none succeeded. I'm only alive because fate wants me alive. Thanos is just the latest in a long line of bastards, and he'll be the latest to feel my vengeance. Fate wills it so.
Mm-hmm. And what if you're wrong?
Well, if I'm wrong, then what more could I lose?
And if you look at Loki's performance in the Loki solo series, it is infinitely better than his performance in Thor Ragnarok. So what's going on? Why don't they care anymore? Do they realize that the whole set is just a joke? Taika Waititi took over and the whole film was a joke. There's no reason to try because it doesn't matter. The plot's a joke. Everything's a joke. Hela shows up and gives us a brief introduction to her insane power by catching Mjolnir and just fucking shattering it with her bare hands. Loki attempts to aid in escaping Hela by summoning the Bifrost Bridge. She follows them through the Bifrost portal, knocking Loki and both Thor out of the Bifrost portal and arriving on Asgard.
kneel before your queen?
I don't think so.
Darling, you have no idea what's possible.
Bring us back! No!
After arriving on Asgard, she completely decimates the Warriors 3, or at least 2/3 of the Warriors 3, without any amount of ceremony, and it is so disappointing. These are Thor's closest friends.
Found you! My friends! This is good. This is good.
I don't believe it.
Oh, excuse me. The Lady Sif and the Warriors 3. My friends, I've never been happier to see anyone.
His closest compatriots, and they get executed without so much as a second thought. They've been with Thor in all of his films in the MCU. Of course, they weren't the most pivotal characters in the film, but they did have a role to play. But there is no ceremony for their death. They're just killed and tossed to the side like they're some no-name NPC Asgardian warriors. Thor falls out of the Bifrost somewhere in the universe and lands on planet Sakaar, where he is accosted by a bunch of random scavengers who manage to take down the God of Thunder with lightning coursing through his veins and literal elemental powers with an electric net like he is cattle.
Food! On your knees.
He is then saved by Valkyrie, who shows up very drunk and very cool looking, I say that sarcastically, and takes out the scavengers, but then proceeds to also incapacitate Thor with some kind of shock collar the size of a very, very small bug.
Thank you.
As you can see, this film is not taking itself seriously, so you shouldn't take it seriously either. I can't wait until they let Taika Waititi direct the Fantastic Four movie and Johnny Storm dies in a house fire because the fire was too hot. Meanwhile, Hela begins her takeover of Asgard by essentially requesting that all of Asgard stand down and surrender to her rightful rule so that they can begin again their conquest of all the 9 realms in all the known universe. Of course, the Asgardians don't want to do that, so they engage in a admittedly pretty cool fight with Hela. It's interesting to see how much of a threat she genuinely is, to the point where she's taking fatal blows to her body and recovering like it's nothing. And I wish we could have got more scenes like this in a more seriously toned Thor Ragnarok. But unfortunately, they went a lot more for levity and quote-unquote funny scenes. Hela ultimately takes out the rest of the Warriors 3 by executing the last member, and unfortunately Lady Sif is nowhere to be found. But I should say fortunately, because she didn't have to suffer being in this film and dying pointlessly. Back on Sakaar, Thor is being introduced to the Grandmaster, played expertly by Jeff Goldblum, might I ask. He really makes you realize this movie is a piece of to shit and you don't want to be watching it. Valkyrie ends up selling Thor to the Grandmaster so that he can take place in his gladiator games, which we are supposed to believe that Valkyrie then redeems herself by the end of the movie and becomes the hero. Thor finds out that Loki had been dropped off on the same planet, which is an incredible coincidence because they were knocked out of the Bifrost Bridge at completely different points during their transport, but somehow they ended up on the same planet. Apparently time works differently on the planet, and Loki had been there for weeks while Thor had just arrived, which makes absolutely no sense to me, but hey, fuck explaining anything. We then are treated to a lovely scene of Taika Waititi sucking himself off by making himself the most insufferable character in the movie.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Korg. I'm kind of like the leader in here. I'm made of rocks, as you can see, but don't let that intimidate you. You don't need to be afraid unless you're made of scissors. Just a little rock, paper, scissor joke for you.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Who cares about Korg? Who cares to put Korg in the movie? Taika Waititi does, because he can't resist putting himself in his own films. He has to be a pivotal part of the movie for some god-forsaken reason. It is infuriating. At the very least, we get the exposition of whoever faces the Grandmaster's champion typically ends up dead. So it's good to know that our other protagonist, Valkyrie, is basically just selling people to die for the Grandmaster, because that's a redeemable hero. Someone who sells people into captivity to die. Essentially slavery. On Asgard, Hela reveals the history of Asgard, not the fake history that Odin taught, but the real history of how her and Odin were basically warlords going all throughout the 9 realms and executing their enemies to basically achieve a time of peace and prosperity for Asgard. It is a bit strange that in the mural that she reveals, we see her with Mjolnir, which, as far as we have known lore-wise, has always been Thor's hammer, because it had the inscription of, "Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor." So are we one insisting that Odin's son is not the only Thor, that Hela was Thor as well, or that Odin had a firstborn, gave her a hammer, didn't have the inscription on it, but then after he had to lock her away due to her bloodlust, put the inscription on there for his secondborn? It raises a lot of questions lore-wise that could have been interesting to tackle, going into how she had the ability to control the hammer, and not only the ability to control the hammer, but the ability to destroy the hammer. But we don't go into that because there's more jokes to be made, you see? Hela goes into Odin's treasure room and recovers the eternal flame and utilizes it to resurrect an army of ancient falling Asgardian warriors, as well as her wolf Fenrir, so that she has all the resources she needs to reignite her conquest. Thor is approached by Loki, who tries to offer him a pact in which they team up to eventually take down the Grandmaster and rule over Sakaar, but Thor, being honor-bound to Asgard, is still intent on getting back home and taking on his sister to try to save his planet. Before his fight with the Grandmaster's champion, he encounters Valkyrie again, where he does discover that she is an Asgardian and is in fact a Valkyrie, one of the warriors sworn to protect the throne, and unfortunately cannot reason with her to get her to work alongside him to go back to Asgard to save their people. Like I said before, she's not really the best. For some reason, before Thor's battle with the Grandmaster's champion, he needs to get a haircut from Stan Lee. I never minded the Stan Lee cameos. I love Stan Lee. I thought all of his cameos were fun, and I understand they need to find some way to put him in the movie, but it's a bit convoluted for him to be the barber for people before they face the Grandmaster's champion. What in-universe reason does Thor need a haircut before he can fight the champion, besides the out-of-universe reason for them to sell more toys and get new outfits for those toys to wear? Why would the Grandmaster want his champions or his combatants to look slightly different? I hate this movie so much that I am going to question every little thing thing. It doesn't matter how inconsequential it is, I'm going to point it out and nitpick at it. Finally, the film gets to an interesting combat sequence where we get a rematch of Thor versus Hulk, and Hulk turns out to be the Grand Master's champion. It's a toss-up for me personally between which of these matches was better, the matchup in Avengers 1 or this one. They both have a lot of great fun sequences. Avengers 1 had the Hulk trying to lift Mjolnir and Thor summoning Mjolnir through the helicarrier, and just a bunch of fun combat sequences in that one.
We're not your enemies, Banner. Try to think.
Thor Ragnarok shows how immensely strong both of these characters are as they just knock each other around and beat each other into the surrounding arena, causing massive damage to the area. Unfortunately, it all culminates in a very anticlimactic ending. Thor, after being beat down by Hulk, taps into a previously untapped into power, according to this film, in which he summons lightning and knocks the Hulk out, or at the very least does severe damage to the Hulk. What makes this all extremely confusing to watch is, directly after doing this and utilizing multiple lightning-based or at least electricity-based attacks, the Grandmaster, not wanting his champion to be defeated, uses that shock collar attached to Thor's neck to incapacitate him. They don't explain the logic of the shock collar at any point in the film. What is it doing? How was he just fully charged and powered by lightning and electricity, not completely overcharged the shock collar? Before, it seemed to be a power dampener of some sort, and it was keeping him in line.
Hey, this lady.
Just wait a damn minute. I'm not for sale.
Man, he's a fighter.
But he broke through that, did he not? By summoning those powers. What is it made out of, and how is it consistently restricting him? The logic in this movie is non-existent. Back on Asgard, Scourge gets a promotion. He goes from being a random nobody to being Hela's executioner. It is brought to Hela's attention that a lot of the Asgardians aren't falling in line, because that's typically what happens when you engage in a hostile takeover and wipe out the entirety of Asgard's standing army. We see some of the citizens of Asgard trying to escape from some of the spectral dead reincarnated Asgardian soldiers, and they are saved by the only person in this film who's taking anything seriously.
Excuse me.
Sorry about that. There's bloody things everywhere.
Come on.
Heimdall. He brings the Asgardian refugees to a secret location and houses them while they try to wait out Hela. Hela then discovers that someone stole the Bifrost sword and she has no access to begin her conquest. On Sakaar, Thor and Hulk have a conversation which isn't at all riveting and doesn't really add anything to the plot. Thor tries to employ Hulk into assisting him on getting back to Asgard so that he can save his people. Unfortunately, Hulk's mind is a bit shattered since it doesn't have the Banner personality to come to reason, so he disagrees and does not choose to help. Thor is essentially a prisoner in the room that they are sequestered in due to the object on his neck. He reaches out to Heimdall in an attempt to try to gain additional information about what's happening back on Asgard.
Heimdall, I know you can see me. I need you to help me. Help me see. I see you, but you're far away. What's going on here? Come see for yourself. Hela is Raptors. If I let her live, she'll consume 9 realms and all the cosmos. We need you. I'm working on it, but I don't even know where the hell I am. Where the planet surrounded by doorways. Go through one. Which one? The big ones.
Heimdall communicates with him and advises him that Asgard is being taken over by Hela and that she draws power directly from Asgard, so the more time she spends on Asgard, the stronger she's getting. He also gives Thor the solution to his problem. Apparently, Sakaar is a planet surrounded by many doorways, which are those portals in the sky that Loki and Thor were transported through. He tells him to go to the largest portal in the sky to escape the planet. Thor gets Hulk to summon Valkyrie back to their room so that he could request that she join them in getting back to Asgard and taking on Hela. Valkyrie advises that she already faced Hela once, but is kind of coy and secretive about what ultimately happened to the rest of the Valkyries in that fight with Hela. Apparently, Hela had tried to take over Asgard once when her lust for conquest grew beyond Odin's control and had massacred everyone in the throne room. Valkyrie, of course, rejects the proposal to join Thor because she doesn't want to face Hela again, understandable, since she suffered so much loss due to Hela, but also it's far more fun and profitable to enslave people to be killed by the Hulk. Again, how does Valkyrie end up being someone we're supposed to cheer for? How many people has she let the Hulk kill? Thor somehow develops some insane pickpocket skills and in the conversation with Valkyrie takes the remote control for the device on his neck away from her, removes the device and escapes the room. Before he escapes the room, he engages in some slapstick comedy.
I choose to run toward my problems and not away from them. That's what because that's what heroes do.
But why? And I think this is emblematic of the entirety of Taika Waititi's misunderstanding of what Thor is and what Thor represents and how Thor's humor should work. Thor is not a jokey joke character, and I think that it's lost on Taika Waititi that Thor isn't a jokey joke character. Thor is a undyingly serious character. He does have an aspect of humor to him though, and the aspect of humor that Thor has is pretty similar to the aspect of humor that Captain America has. It isn't the stark snark where you're constantly making jokes or pop culture references or quips like Spider-Man or slapstick humor like Deadpool getting knocked around. Thor's humor stems from him being a fish out of water, which was expertly presented in the first Thor movie.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
Sorry, Izzy, little accident. What was that?
It was delicious. I want another.
Well, you could have just said so.
I just did.
No, I mean, ask nicely.
I meant no disrespect.
All right, well, no more smashing.
Where he's eating at the diner and he throws the coffee mug on the ground because that's the Asgardian tendencies. It has to be something that's, oh, that's funny because he's doing something he's used to, but that's not a normal thing to be doing for everyone else in that situation. Just like when he first got to Earth and he was looking for a mount and he went to a pet store and didn't know the difference between the animals, so he requested a silly animal to ride. That's Thor's humor. It's him being a fish out of water, interacting with what we perceive to be normal situations in a funny way. It isn't him throwing a ball at a window and having it bounce back on his head and knock him on the ground like he's a fucking Looney Tunes character. Thor escapes to find the Quinjet that Hulk took to get to Sakaar. They can use that to leave the planet. The rampaging Hulk follows Thor in an effort to get him to stay. While they are in the Quinjet, Thor activates the message from Black Widow, which triggers a transformation in Hulk, bringing him back to Banner form. Banner is then informed by Thor that it's been 2 years since the Battle of Ultron, and he has been stuck in the Hulk form for 2 years. The Grandmaster finds out about Hulk and Thor's escape and tasks Loki and the Valkyrie to go after them and bring them back alive. Loki and Valkyrie get into a bit of a tiff about who's in charge of who and who's going to complete the task for the Grandmaster, in which Loki also realizes that Valkyrie is in fact a Valkyrie, and during the fight brings the memory back to the forefront of her mind of the battle in which all of her comrades died.
I thought the Valkyrie would all die gruesome deaths. Choose your next words wisely. I'm terribly sorry. Must be a very painful memory.
During Thor and Banner's escape, Banner brings it to Thor's attention that Hulk and Banner have always battled for control over the body, but historically, they've both had about equal control. Unfortunately, in the last instance, for the past 2 years, Hulk was in total control, causing issues because Banner couldn't fight to get back out. Banner also states that this could possibly mean that if he returned to Hulk form, he would never return back to Banner form.
I just told you, if I turn into the Hulk, I am never going to come back again, and you don't care.
This is an important fact to take note of for what happens later in the film. Valkyrie manages to find Thor and Hulk relatively easily as they traverse a festival that is thrown in Hulk's honor because the Grandmaster thought that that would somehow bring the Hulk back. I'm not sure what the logic was behind that, but ultimately Valkyrie decides that she wants to come back and as a symbol of peace, she offers up a captured Loki. The weirdest character turn. No real logic to her motivation and what managed to change her mind on going back. I'm not sure if seeing how her friends died horrifically to Hela made her think, yeah, I want to die now too. But hey, we got the team together. The team, aptly named the Revengers by a very hilarious Thor, come to the conclusion that to get through the large portal in the sky, also named very hilariously the Devil's Anus, they would need a ship that could withstand the pressure of going through that portal. And Loki offers up a solution that the Grandmaster has a fleet of powerful ships that would be able to go through, and he has stolen the access codes so that he can get them one of the ships in exchange for his freedom. They devise a plan to start a revolution on the planet utilizing the slaves that were set to be slaughtered for entertainment in the gladiatorial arena. Thor and Loki had to recover the ship when they have a genuine somber moment between the two of them that actually does show some decent acting from both Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston. In this entire 2-hour-long shit show, they managed to have one decent scene together.
Come on, this place is perfect for you. It's savage, chaotic, lawless. I think you can do great here.
Do you truly think so little of me?
Okay, I thought the world of you. I thought we were going to fight side by side forever, but at the end of the day, you're you and I'm me. And maybe that's still good in you, but let's be honest, our paths diverged a long time ago.
which is immediately punctuated by them doing the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. They have a plan that they've constantly done called Get Help, where Thor throws Loki at enemies because they're not gods or anything with godlike power. They need to throw the physical body of each other at enemies. Loki does try to betray Thor again, but Thor knows that Loki is predictable and that this would happen, and does talk down to Loki, letting him know that he is disappointed in his behavior because he thinks so highly of his brother and wishes that his brother would try to do something more with his life as opposed to constantly causing trouble. The Revengers get into an interesting chase sequence, which is actually pretty cool because you get to see how powerful Asgardians are in comparison to everyone else. Thor and Valkyrie both individually take out multiple spaceships with their bare hands. The Revengers escape through the wormhole and somehow end up right in front of Asgard, which I feel like is a bit of an oversight. Why would the Asgardians or the Allfather Odin just allow there to be a wormhole just right in front of their planet from Sakaar directly to them? I feel like that's a huge security issue, but alas, the movie needs to find a way to wrap itself up. Right before their arrival on Asgard, Hela is about to execute an innocent Asgardian in an attempt to locate the Bifrost sword. Right before Hela has Scourge execute the Asgardian, some snitch comes out of the crowd and gives up the rest of the refugees and Heimdall so that Hela can go retrieve the Bifrost sword. Hela goes through the mountains to attempt to get the Bifrost sword from the refugees and Heimdall. Heimdall, using his all-seeing vision, realizes she's on her way there, so evacuates the rest of the Asgardians through the back of the mountain to hopefully escape by the Bifrost bridge. In the interim, Thor plans his assault on the capital so that he can hold off Hela so that everyone else can evacuate to the ship and escape to safety. We get a cool moment of him sitting on the throne, and it kind of makes you upset because we never truly get a moment after Odin's death in the MCU of Thor being the Allfather. Even in Avengers Infinity War and then Avengers Endgame directly after, when he has the ability to be in charge of Asgard, he's just a lazy sloth. I wish we at some point during the MCU's run with Thor got to see Thor be the Allfather and sit on the throne of Asgard. I think that would have been a really cool thing to see. Hela approaches Thor on the throne of Asgard, and they have a conversation about their father's behavior and how both of them had been casted out by Odin for stepping out of line, essentially. But they both see ruling Asgard in a different way. Thor wants to emulate his father's later life, being a benevolent ruler, and Hela wants to emulate the beginning of her father's life, being a warmonger and a destroyer king. It's a cool conversation that leads into a battle between the two of them. But what is going on with this last shot here? They charge each other, Thor using a kind of spear item and Hela using one of her summoned swords. Hela does a jumping lunge attack and Thor brings the spear back over his head and must have forgotten where Hela was. I think he loses all positional awareness. Look at this final frame before it cuts to the next scene. Where was Thor going to hit? He was going to get stabbed in the neck and murdered. I'm not sure who choreographed this, but it was horrendous. During the evacuation, Heimdall and the Asgardians make it to the Bifrost Bridge, where they are unfortunately surrounded on both sides. One side by Fenrir and an army of undead, and on the other side by Scourge and an army of undead. They are assisted by Bruce Banner and Valkyrie in the air shooting down at Fenrir, while some of the Asgardians fight back the undead. Thor and Hela continue their combat, Hela being clearly skilled and more apt in direct hand-to-hand combat, as well as being powered up by spending more time on Asgard. During the battle, Hela stabs out one of Thor's eyes, resulting in him resembling his Allfather Thor appearance. The next scene is one of the most aggravating scenes in the entire MCU to me. During the fight on the Bifrost Bridge, Valkyrie runs out of ammunition and Fenrir, the giant wolf, won't die, and you see a conflict within Bruce Banner as he battles with himself, deciding on whether or not he should Hulk out and help the refugees. And ultimately, he makes a decision to Hulk out. Remember that thing I told you guys to keep in the back of your mind from earlier in the film, when Banner said that if he became the Hulk again, he would lose himself and not be able to return to Banner form ever again. This is a huge sacrifice he's willing to make, basically losing his core personality to the monster that is the Hulk, the monster which he hates. If you remember back in the Avengers film, Banner talks about a time where he attempted suicide because he didn't want to be the Hulk anymore.
Agent Romanoff, would you escort Dr. Banner back to his
Where? You rented my room.
The cell was just
in case you needed to kill me, but you can't. I know, I tried. I got low. I didn't see an end, so I put a bullet in my mouth and the other guy spit it out.
He speaks about trying to shoot himself and waking up as the Hulk because the Hulk body took over and prevented his death. And essentially, he's going back to being that beast for the rest of his life. A moment that should be treated with some kind of weight and it should be more serious is punctuated by him jumping out of the ship, and instead of transforming in midair and saving those people, he hits the Bifrost in the most slapstick, Looney Tunes, Hanna-Barbera, stupid way I've ever seen. And it's just all such a waste. I wish the continuity directors that work on these films actually had more of a say, or actually paid attention to things that were brought up in the prior films, because it all felt pointless. It all was a joke. The battle on the Bifrost continues to rage on and comes to look hopeless as the Asgardians aren't aptly prepared to take on an army. But before things are all lost and Heimdall is felled, Korg and the rest of the rebellion show up from Sakaar, led by Loki, who finally decides to turn around and make himself useful. Hela overlooks the battle and continues to assault Thor, nearly killing him, but then tees him up for the weirdest reveal of all time as she boasts about herself being the goddess of death, basically walking Thor into some sort of revelation so that he can power up.
You see, I'm not a queen or a monster. I'm the goddess of death. What were you the god of again?
That's called foreshadowing.
Hela beats Thor's ass so badly that he has a vision of the dead Odin basically instructing Thor on what his powers were, which is endlessly confusing.
It's too strong. Without my hammer, I can't.
Are you Thor, the god of hammers? That hammer was to help you control your power, to focus it. It's never your source of strength.
He tells Thor that he wasn't the god of hammers. The hammer was just there to hone his powers. But let's think about this for a second. We've watched Thor multiple times in previous films either summon lightning without utilizing the hammer, or summon lightning towards the hammer. Are you telling me this entire time that Thor has been alive, he thought the hammer is where his powers came from? At no point was there a conversation about him being the god of thunder because he had that power within him inherently. He legitimately thought that Mjolnir was the thing that had the power inside of it. What kind of idiotic shit is that? That's like Captain America thinking the shield is where the super soldier serum is, and if he's not holding the shield, he's not strong anymore. But of course, after that chatting to, and Hela basically also trying to get him to power up by asking him 336 times what he's the god of.
What were you the god of again? Tell me, brother, what were you the god of again?
Well,
That's just lazy writing.
Thor finally realizes, oh yeah, I have lightning powers, and brings down a lightning strike to destroy Hela. And it doesn't even fucking work. With Thor's newfound lightning powers that he didn't know he had before, he makes short work of the undead army on the Bifrost Bridge. But then Hela strolls up completely unfazed by that lightning strike because she's just that powerful, which isn't a complaint. There's some villains who are literally just that powerful. Thor realizes that the only way to stop Hela is by causing Ragnarok, so he sends his brother Loki to get the crown of Surtur and bring the fire giant to life. Right before the refugee ship can escape, Hela impales the ship with a giant spike. Some of the undead soldiers begin to climb aboard, and Scourge, who had blended in with the refugees, decides to finally have his heroic moment and reveals some AK-47s he had and shoot down the undead army and then lay down his life for the safety of Asgard. Note, I have no clue what guns these are. I'm fairly certain they're no AK-47s though. Please don't go in the comments telling me, oh Volt, that's not an AK-47, it's a blah 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 blah. I don't care. The Asgardians manage to escape and get out of Hela's range, and Hela turns back to face Thor and Valkyrie, and right before she can kill them once and for all, Surtur is brought back to life and begins to raise Asgard. In one last-ditch attempt to save her home and her kingdom, Hela rises from the waters below, sending large shards into Surtur's chest, but to no avail since he is made infinitely more powerful by the prophecy of Ragnarok and the fire of the eternal flame. Surtur brings down his sword and destroys Hela and completely razes Asgard into rubble. There's also a moment right before this happens where the Hulk jumps towards Surtur. It's a moment that they showed in the trailer, which you would believe would have led to something pretty cool, like that one time where the Amazing Spider-Man 2 trailer had Spider-Man throwing that pothole cover into the Rhino, but that was the last shot of the movie and there was no fight after that. Hulk punches Surtur for all of 5 seconds before he's thrown onto the Bifrost. So who even cares about any of that? Thor, Hulk, and Valkyrie make it back to the ship and watch the final destruction of Asgard. And then we reach the conclusion of the movie. Loki is there as well. Thor is named rightful king of Asgard and is on the search for a new home for his people. And then in the post-credit scene, Thanos shows up and wipes out half the population because Loki decided to steal the Tesseract from Odin's throne room. So, what was the point? And that is all of Thor Ragnarok, the worst Thor movie in the MCU. The MCU found itself in a really weird place around the time of Thor Ragnarok. A lot of people were saying that the MCU was too comedic and everything was a joke and it was too kiddie and they couldn't take themselves seriously. And it was hard being a Marvel fan and a Marvel Cinematic Universe fan to defend that premise because there were a lot of scenes and instances where there would be unnecessary jokes or serious plot points wouldn't be taken so seriously because characters would be joking or having fun with it. So at the time it was difficult to argue against that premise, but you always had one character that was more serious. Thor 1 and Thor the Dark World did have more serious tones, and unfortunately they did flop, but they didn't flop because they were just pound for pound horrendous movies. They flopped because they just needed some slight tweaks to make the movies good. They weren't the sum of their parts, but there were a lot of good parts in the films. And instead of getting a director that more aptly understands Thor as a character and could have done something interesting with the World War Hulk or the Planet Hulk or the Ragnarok storyline to actually give us a pretty somber, interesting, fun watch, we got exactly what people expected from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A complete joke of a film. And the worst part was, it was Thor's most successful film. Outlet after outlet, article after article, YouTube after YouTuber were stating that Thor is finally back. Thor is finally watchable. They finally got Thor right. And I disagree. They took Thor and bastardized the character. They took away his honor. They took away his dignity. He still has some serious moments, and there was some semblance of the god of thunder within him. But the core Thor was gone. He went from a misunderstood character that just needed a little bit more work to a jerk, and not even a funny jerk. Thanks for watching. Behave yourself.